You need to foster a culture within your business of allowing a candid conversation between the IT and the security team and the board and the C-suite. There's two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that have been hacked but just don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
That's just where we are. Synthetic opioids, over 100,000 Americans overdosed on synthetic opioids last year. That is the equivalent of if a standard jetliner crashed every single day.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. I recently had the great pleasure of meeting with Robert Silvers at our Worth Techonomy event in New York City. From the moment I met Robert and I had started speaking with him, I knew we were going to hit it off. He's not only a brilliant leader, but also a genuinely great guy with thoughtful, collaborative approach to tackling some of the most pressing challenges we face as a country today. Robert serves as the Undersecretary for Policy at the Department of Homeland Security, where he oversees critical areas like counterterrorism, cybersecurity, AI safety, and trade security. His leadership helped to shape the future of national security and innovation, and his work as chair of the U.S. Cyber Safety Review Board and the Federal Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force has been nothing short of transformative. At Techonomy, we got a chance to dive into the evolving landscape of cybersecurity and the essential role of public-private partnership in protecting our nation. We also touched on challenges and opportunities for the upcoming administration. It was an honor for me to have Robert with me on stage, and it's a privilege to share our conversation with you here. In 2021, President Biden nominated you, Robert, to be, and the Senate confirmed, fortunately, you as Undersecretary for Policy at the Department of Homeland Security. Robert drives the direction of the agency across all of its missions, including cybersecurity, AI safety, border security, immigration, international affairs, trade and economic security. That's a pretty big plate you have there.
Yeah.
So this is your second stint at DHS. You worked both under President Biden and before that under President Obama. First, a genuine thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you so much.
During your time not in government service, you're a very accomplished partner at a prestigious law firm called Paul Hastings. Tell us a little bit, Robert, about the idea of government service. I like the idea of not lifelong politicians. I like people coming from the private sector into government. And you're a living example of what's so special and unique about our system, which is that people come from very successful careers in the private sector and then lend their time and their energy and their intelligence and their capabilities in a public setting. Tell us how you feel about having done that twice. And there's a rumor that there's been an election and maybe there's about 60 days left in your tenure.
I can confirm the rumor. Public service, government is one place where with your career, you can make really big things happen. Yeah. And sometimes it works slowly, and sometimes it works not as functionally as you would like. But when you can get certain things to click in, you can make really big changes that are for the good of the American people and the good of the world. And I've always been attracted to security and defense and how those who would want to harm us might try, whether it's the Chinas and the Russias or bad criminal actors, and how we can organize as companies, as a government, as a country to defend against all that. So we have an architecture of security around what makes this country so vibrant, where there can be so much innovation, so much of what's being celebrated today at the conference. And it's through my tours of public service that I've been able to contribute toward that in a really enriching way.
Robert, share with us how you became a very accomplished attorney. I wouldn't expect you were doing a lot in cybersecurity, but in your first stint in the Department of Homeland Security, you saw that back in 2015, there was a lot of interest in this cyber world, and it was really no one organized within DHS to take control and steer the path of how that would play an important role in our country's security. And you said, hey, tell us about your conversation with Secretary Johnson.
Yeah, at the time, this is about 10 years ago in the Obama administration, I was in this generalist job called Deputy Chief of Staff for the whole department. And so it was covering all those different missions that you mentioned, counterterrorism and the border, and when there were hurricanes and disaster response and the Secret Service.
How many people in DHS?
Just 260,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a huge organization. It's massive.
And up until 2015, not a lot of people paying attention to cyber.
That's right. And that was an area where the threats were coming in hot, but we weren't built for it. We didn't have a mature line of business to deal with that. Companies were just picking their head up, thinking about how they may be targeted. And it was an area where we needed to really build out really fast. And so the Secretary of Homeland Security asked me, I need you to focus on this, get us up to, and I was spending more and more of my time on it in what was supposed to be a job kind of overseeing the whole organization. So eventually he said, get in there, you go run that. You go run that.
Good for you.
And I said, okay, and there was no plan around that. I mean, 2 years before that, cybersecurity wasn't even on my radar as a potential career direction for me. But I was kind of, in the right place at the right time. I kind of have a career motto of like, always run into the burning building.
Yeah.
When something's hard and important and needs attention, be the one that will throw yourself in there, because that's where opportunity lies.
Yeah. Grew up here on 86th Street?
I grew up on East 86th Street. So I guess 72 blocks that way.
And funny, you don't look German. Remember there used to be a German neighborhood.
There's like one or two legacy German delis and beer halls up there, but you wouldn't. It's a vestige. Yeah. Just like if you go to Little Ukraine, there's a couple places that still serve the oxtail dumplings. But
and where'd you go to undergrad?
I went to Penn in Philadelphia, and then I went to NYU Law School just that way. So I was really. New York for a long time, but then I was invited to the Obama administration.
How did that happen?
I was a junior associate at my law firm, a partner with who I worked.
Always at Paul Hastings?
No, this was Melvin and Myers, which is a different, global firm. And a partner of mine was invited to join the administration. And he, I sort of was interested. I said, that sounds cool, know. And so he said, all right, come along. And so I moved to Washington. That partner, as it turns out, his name is Alejandro Mayorkas. And he eventually he is now the Secretary of Homeland Security.
So is it he who invited you back?
It is he who invited me into the Obama administration, and then back into the Biden administration, and the president agreed and nominated me.
That's what a great turn in your career. But you were open to it.
I took calculated risks.
Yeah.
I was willing to move to a new city. I moved to Washington at the end of 2011. In a politically appointed role as part of the Obama team. So if Obama had lost re-election in 2012, I would have had like 10 months on the job and out.
Yeah.
But I said, look, I was like, you don't get to time your opportunities always. And it was exciting.
What was that conversation with it like at home?
The conversation at home was supportive. We didn't have kids at that time, and so it was we were younger. It was a time where risk appetites tend to be a little higher.
Kids do change your appetite for risk.
They do. So, but I rushed into it, and it kind of flipped my career in a whole direction that I wasn't seeing. But I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah. How do you sleep at night?
I sleep beautifully. I really do. I mean, it's not to say that everything's copacetic, but I just by disposition, I'm able to compartment out.
Yeah.
I also just by temperament, when a situation is really hot, my blood pressure goes down.
Really?
And
is that something you've developed, or it's always been?
I just like it. I'm okay, and I can see what's going on and I like to figure it out. It's when there's not too much going on and I don't have enough to do that I start to get very, very anxious.
So tell us, how should we be thinking about the scope of cyber threats today? There's all different kinds. My mind right away goes to foreign bad actors, governments, government-sponsored groups, government-permitted groups, but it's internal too. I wonder, when you travel to these fancy places around the world that we get to go to, I wonder if I'm going to be in the Caribbean someday or in the Mediterranean, I'd see a yacht go by and, oh yeah, that's one of those cyber guys' yachts. There's an enormous amount of money being made around the world. I've heard numbers that knock my socks off about how much ransom is being paid every day, every week, every year. What's going on there, and what would we expect comes next?
The cyber threat is total now in terms of.
Well, I'm glad you're sleeping. I'm not now.
In terms of the what companies are impacted. There's two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that have been hacked but just don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
That's just where we are. And it comes from it's China, it's Russia. They're trying to steal intellectual property, or they're trying to do espionage and learn. Some of it is these ransomware.
I mean, they're making so much money that could support
be $50,
government.
$60 million a pop sometimes.
Yeah.
It's massive amounts of company, because ransomware can bring a company to its knees operationally in a split second. And so it puts companies in an absolutely terrible position. So that's all the doom and gloom. But what I'll say is, with the right approaches, with the right defenses and the right investments, companies can protect themselves. And we've seen over and over that the bad actors will target a company, the company's defenses will repel them, and so the actors will then move on to another company.
It's behavioral. They'll go with his less resistance.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the how
many hours are in a day?
It's the idea of lock your front door, right? Like, it's not to say that a determined burglar couldn't get in, but they'll often just go for the one that's the easiest mark.
Yeah.
And so the strategy has to be to make your company, your organization, one that is well defended. And there are very established best practices that my department publishes on how companies can do that, including small and medium-sized businesses that may not be incredibly well-resourced, but there are basic things that can be done. And the message is, figure out what those are and then empower your information technology team to make sure they're putting those into place. And you need to foster a culture within your business of allowing a candid conversation between the IT and the security team and the board and the C-suite. Because too often the IT security professionals don't feel empowered to raise the concerns. They get the budget they get. It is what it is. You need to have boards conducting quarterly oversight over where are we and hitting our cybersecurity milestones. What do you need? Do you have everything you need? And with those kinds of discussions, companies can really level up.
Tell us about how you look at and how you think we should continue to evolve in our attitudes about public-private partnering, especially in this area. Businesses, private enterprise can't go do this on their own. They need partnership with you and your teams. And you can't do it on your own because you can't possibly have enough R&D budget to keep up. So how's this partnership playing out, and how has it changed just during your tenure here in this most recent go-round?
When I was in the Obama administration, if I'm being honest about it, our model was we would meet with a company and we'd congratulate each other on the work we do together, and then everybody would just leave the meeting and go back into their corners and go back to work. Mm-hmm. And what we have done in the last few years is we have moved to a model of what we call operational collaboration between the government's cyber defense agency and
which is part of Homeland Security?
Which is an agency called CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, which is one of the agencies within my department. And
we had someone on stage earlier from CISA.
There you go. Yeah. And we pursue what's called operational collaboration, meaning we are embedded either physically together in the same operating centers or virtual operating centers, working on Slack channels, sharing real-time information about the threats. What are you seeing? What are you seeing? What are you seeing? And then we aggregate it all so that everybody has a better threat picture. Similarly, when there's now a very serious incident, we formed something called the Cyber Safety Review Board, which I chair.
You chair, I see that. Yeah.
And half the members are all the federal leads for cybersecurity. So the head of cyber at the FBI, the head of cyber at the National Security Agency, and so on. And half the members are these luminaries from the private sector in cybersecurity. And we go in together to investigate what happened and then to make recommendations to the broader community based on the lessons learned so it doesn't happen again. And again, the idea is that has to be joint. Nobody has a monopoly on the good ideas.
And the good idea yesterday is not today's idea.
Exactly. So you have to do it together, shoulder to shoulder, government and industry. It's not just about lowering barriers between them. It's actually about dissolving the barriers in many cases.
We've talked all day about the impact of artificial intelligence on everything. And this year, I've become a full believer that it changes everything. How's it changed your world?
We take this on from a few angles. So first, we at our department, we are avid customers of artificial intelligence technology. We are using it to better detect fentanyl coming across the border. Let me tell you a story about that. I mean, there was a border agent in San Diego at the border with Tijuana. A car came to go through the checkpoint to cross from Mexico into the U.S. We have AI technology that got the license plate, said we detected an anomaly. We've seen this car in suspicious circumstances before. It returned a hit to the officer in 1.4 seconds, saying there's something that should be looked into here. The officer referred the car for further inspection, 50 kilos of drugs.
50 kilos of fentanyl.
One car.
It's enough to wipe out half the country.
So we are using this stuff. We're using it to make the airport screening experience better with TSA. We're using it for better customer service.
How would TSA?
Well, if you can get artificial intelligence to look at an X-ray of a bag to detect anomalies, it's probably going to be eventually more accurate than a human operator and also faster.
Yeah.
And so we're using it across the board. As we're approaching it from another angle too. Among many roles, the Department of Homeland Security is the guardian of our country's critical infrastructure, electric grid, air traffic control, hospital systems. As artificial intelligence is deployed into the core operations of these kinds of essential service providers, you're going to have incredible efficiency. It's a great thing, but you also run a risk there's a risk there of just a mistaken outcome. An algorithmic decision gets made that leads to a catastrophic result or something that hurts people or just disrupts the service. And we don't want that to happen. So what we have done is we have developed guidelines for critical infrastructure operators to deploy this technology, but deploy it safely and securely. And so we've said, here are the recommended practices when it comes to testing and auditing of these systems and when you need a human in the loop and how to do sort of methodical risk assessment to get all the benefits of this technology, but put a little risk mitigation around it too. So we're very focused on it from that perspective.
In the next few years in your department, what are the big challenges besides the change in leadership? But what are not the political challenges, but what are the threat challenges that they should be most focused on as you leave a note on your desk for your successor?
Well, on the note of artificial intelligence, it's going to enable cyber attackers to automate and scale up their attacks. Just by making convincing.
There won't be spelling errors anymore.
Phishing emails and all that. It's also, though, going to empower cyber defenders.
Yeah.
So,
but it seems like the bad guys are always a little earlier.
Yeah, sometimes. But though actually the defensive applications of AI are tangible and are already here.
Yeah.
So and in use in companies around the world. Counterterrorism is different now than it used to be. It used to be, you think about the Al-Qaeda model and Osama bin Laden running command and control from sort of openly in these camps in Afghanistan and elsewhere. We're kind of past that. And it's now, we've made great strides in dismantling a lot of those groups, which is excellent. But what remains are more what we call lone wolf actors that are inspired by noxious stuff that they read online. They may well be American citizens already here. And it's more challenging to get a heads up to even know who might be planning something like that. So the terrorism environment has changed. And then the final one is I mentioned fentanyl, killed synthetic opioids. Over 100,000 Americans overdosed on synthetic opioids last year. That is the equivalent of if a standard jetliner crashed every single day. So it's almost an unfathomable scale, and it's urban and rural, it's red state and blue state, it's socioeconomically distributed. It's a real challenge, and we've made some inroads, but there's a lot more work to do when it comes to fentanyl. It's just a huge challenge. It's so small that to conceal it and bring it into this country, concealed within the huge number of massive cargo containers and truckloads that are coming into this of legitimate commerce, is a massive challenge. So that's something that's ongoing.
Well, I mentioned to Robert outside that I volunteered, and I'm on a long line of volunteers who would like to be his agent, because over the next 60 days, there's going to be a lot of inbounds, because you're a hot property, Robert, with what you know, what you've done, your background, your education, your energy, your intelligence, your youth. I think you're going to be quite marketable. I think you're going to have some good options. How many countries have you been to in the last 4 years?
That's a good question. I don't know. It might be 20, give or take. I mean, I've racked up a good number of miles.
Any you want to go back to?
Paris, France is always nice. Haven't been there as much for work as I would have liked, but.
Well, I think you'll all join me in thanking Robert for his service 2 times now, and I think we all look forward to seeing the next phase of your amazing career. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you, everyone.
It's my sister's birthday.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
They have tons of great birthday gifts.
Wow.
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 Happy birthday, baby.
Wow.
Yeah, me. I got to contain myself.
1-800-Flowers.
Celebrate the people you love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.